Welcome here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora's very special broadcast here centering on the Owls of Rice University. I'm here with Director of Athletics, Recreation, and Lifetime Fitness, Joe Karlgaard, and I am honored and privileged, as always, to have Joe on the broadcast. He's been here with us before. We've never done it picture in picture, so I'm happy to have him here today for many different topics inside of a fantastic conversation that centers on the Owl's Nest. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Dan, and thanks for having me on. It's equally my honor to be on with you today.
Well, and listen, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the time that you've taken, within this time period of the announcement of heading to the American Athletic Conference and reaching out and building a bridge with Rice University. I can't thank you enough and thank your staff enough for providing the opportunity for me to tell the story. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a privilege to be able to tell it. It's such an exciting time here on campus, knowing that we've got this transition in front of us.
So a lot of great things coming up here. You and I have spoke. I remember where we were talking the last time I did the show and we were recording something. I remember exactly where I was sitting. So that must speak something about you, Joe, and about your how memorable you are, because in other places, I can't remember what I had for lunch, but I can remember where I was when I was talking with you on the phone. So I'm happy to have you back here. You and I've talked about this before. We're typically used to hearing athletics director or director of athletics, sometimes VP for intercollegiate athletics. Your title is a little bit longer: Director of Athletics, Recreation, and Lifetime Fitness. We've discussed it before, but to those who don't know, and to kind of give a little refresher, when you see that extended title of Director of Athletics, Recreation, and Lifetime Fitness, what does that mean to you that you have a title that carries a lot more weight than what we're typically used to seeing?
Yeah, it's an awesome responsibility because it touches every corner of campus. This goes back to, I believe, the early 2000s. I think Chris Delcani was the athletics director here at the time, and they decided to bring campus recreation under the umbrella of the athletic department. And so I have broad responsibilities for intramurals, club sports, our recreation center. Lifetime Fitness touches not just students, but faculty, staff, and alumni as well. And so it's really kind of a global perspective on activity. And it's, to be fair, most of my time is spent on our 16 varsity programs. But it's no less important to me to have the opportunity to serve the rest of the campus through participation opportunities. And I like that responsibility.
In that Lifetime Fitness side of it, when you see that, that is a commitment to excellence for a lifetime. Whenever you see typically you don't see that word, right? Lifetime. So people might be training for a certain period of time. They might be getting ready for something and they're ramping up to it. When you talk about movie stars, right? They have to be on a certain regimen for that movie. And once it's done, then they can go back to what they're doing. When I hear Lifetime Fitness, I hear a lifetime commitment to taking care of your health and well-being, which I think is a very special avenue that Rice takes with your title. And I'd love for you to go a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Dan. It really is kind of the comprehensive view on wellness from the time our students hit campus as freshmen, through the rest of their lives. And then for our faculty and staff who work here, it signals to them that it's no less important that we understand their needs and goals as it pertains to fitness too. One of the things that I think is so great about the college experience, particularly the undergraduate experience, is just some of the habits that you develop while you're on campus.
Yeah.
And so for our students, we want them, if they've pickleball's all the rage today, right? So, if they've never played pickleball before, we want them to be exposed to that. So maybe that's a habit or a game that they go on to play for the rest of their lives, whether it's walking on this beautiful campus, learning how to swim, weight training, yoga, meditation, all of those things. College students at Rice like to experiment with different classes, to figure out what they're passionate about. And we look at our fitness opportunities in the same vein. And so it's about developing habits for our students, but then it's also ensuring that our older faculty and staff and those who serve our students are accounted for as well, and that we are helping them transition through the different phases of their life in a healthy way. And I think we do a great job of it.
You know, and like you said, when you're on campus and you're a student athlete, you have the opportunity and you have the resources to certain things that other people don't. And once you're done, you want to carry that on. And I've dealt with a lot of different colleges and universities. You know, Joe, that every place can be different, right? And some places are transactional. They utilize the student athlete for as long as that student athlete can make them money and help them with their TV ratings and all of that. And once the student athlete's done, they detach from that. They say, okay, we've given you all these resources, we've given you all these opportunities, we benefited from you. Now you're done here. Goodbye. Other schools don't do that. They say, once you're here, you're with us forever. You're an owl forever. How do you live by that reality at Rice, that your student athletes don't feel transactional, and that once they're done with their eligibility, they don't feel like Rice doesn't want them anymore?
Yeah, the two things come to mind as you talk about this. One is that our size is absolutely plays into this. I mean, we're only 4,600 student athletes, or only 4,600 students, about 400 student athletes, small number of graduate students, a small alumni base. And so the size of the campus in many ways just dictates our approach, and that this is not a place where you can, whether you're a student athlete or a musician or the next hotshot engineer or entrepreneur on campus, this is not a place that you can go and hide. Everybody develops relationships with each other, and those relationships are meaningful. They're the things that I think it's part of the secret sauce of Rice. And so we attend to it, and take it very, very seriously. I've been on bigger campuses where maybe they can't scale what we do effectively. And so it is more of a transactional experience. And I certainly don't think that that's what we do. And then I think it's part of the recruiting process for us too. It's you can come here and our president has office hours, and you're going to be exposed to some of the greatest minds in the world, and you're going to develop relationships in your dorm with with people who are going to go on and conduct groundbreaking research or invent new things or become the best cancer surgeon in the world. And so that the relationship part of it is extremely important to us, and it's something that I think people ask me about this, parents and alumni and whatnot. Like my background and set of experiences, like what sets Rice apart, and it's absolutely the relationship part of it. And we think that differentiator works well for us.
Joe Karlgaard here with us this morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and very happy to have Joe here for Rice University, for the Owls Director of Athletics, Recreation, and Lifetime Fitness. As you're discussing this and you give those numbers out, 4,600 students, 400 student athletes, your student athletes make up for 1/10 of your campus. So, when there's so much focus in the world on the athletic side of things at colleges and universities, there's 9/10 that are not student athletes. So bring me into that. And really, I mean, you painted that picture without even maybe knowing that you painted that picture, saying this is 1/10 of what's on our campus. There's 9/10 of everybody else that are doing, different things and bringing different elements to our university. How do you value the entire group and the other 9/10 and not just the 1/10 that so much focus goes on? Because I know you care about your student athletes, but I'd love to hear about the rest of campus and what it's like as well.
I think it's very important for us as a campus consisting of different schools, departments, and units to celebrate each other's accomplishments. And I think this place does that very, very well. So, if somebody wins a MacArthur Genius Grant, That's cause for campus celebration. That's something that our coaches talk to our student athletes and prospective student athletes about. If we've got a student who gets a great internship or gets into one of the more selected medical schools in the world, we talk about that. I mean, we have Erica Agumake is a former student athlete, to be sure. She's part of the Agumake family, which is, arguably the first family of women's basketball in this country. And she's doing her medical school rotations right now. Her sisters both played in the WNBA, but for Erica, it's all about becoming a doctor. And so, we try to celebrate that as much as possible. I think it's a small enough place where, it's sort of like a family. And I know that's kind of an overused term in college athletics. How many teams do you see huddle up and go family on three, and then they all go their separate ways. But I think here, there just are no corners or pockets of campus where you can go and hide. Yeah. There's sort of this, I don't want to call it forced integration, but it's just an environment that's conducive to that sort of thing. So whenever something great happens on this campus, we find our student athletes celebrating it. Whenever our student athletes accomplish something great, we find our campus celebrating us.
Yeah, and that's a great bonding of the two. And some universities and colleges kind of lose that, right? Their athletics are here and their academics are here, but you have to bond those two worlds, because I mean, I just think about it from the sheer sweatshirt, right? If I'm going to Rice, I'm wearing an owl sweatshirt, then, whether I'm a student athlete or I'm working, toward my major, whatever that may be, like to me, broadcasting, I'm an owl. And if you're an owl, you're an owl. And so that's the beauty of it and what connects everybody, no matter when you went to school over the many years. I have to say this because it's incredible. And in the intro to everything here, people saw a picture of this. Your campus looks like a fortress. Can we discuss how incredible that, like, it looks like a movie set? And I'm already, and I've done screenwriting in my life. So don't be surprised if I don't come to you at some point or come to the office hours of your president and say, I think I want to kind of maybe use this for something, but you are very aesthetically pleasing as a university on a very unique campus that looks like it could be the setting of many different types of movies. And I would love to know what it's like to walk onto campus every day into this fortress.
It's incredible. And it is the picture of our main quad and Lovett Hall, which is kind of the main building, the iconic building on the Rice campus, is often used as stock photo by the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, U.S. News and World Report. You'll see, like, they'll talk about top ranked colleges and universities, and without even saying it's Rice University, they'll put that picture up there just because it looks like, I don't know, some version of Hogwarts, right? It's got that feel to it. It's an unbelievable campus. It's 300 acres. It's lined with oak trees. We have an inner loop, and then we have a path that encircles the campus that people run and walk on. So you can exercise around the Rice campus too. It's also strategically located beautifully within the city of Houston. So right across Main Street is the Texas Medical Center. It's the largest medical complex in the world. There's something like 20 different hospitals, clinics, medical schools, and research think tanks right across the street. They're doing groundbreaking research, and it's sort of like, you'll hear about people at MD Anderson after the fact, but like on any given day, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of household names right across the street getting evaluated, getting treatment. So it's great to have that right across the street. We've got this wonderful neighborhood to our West University Place. Easy access to highways, easy access to downtown. Somebody told me when I got here, if you were to locate a university strategically within the city of Houston, you would put it exactly where Rice is.
Yeah, and you see, not only do you have this beautiful campus that you just described, but that behind it you see these trees, and then the city is just looming right behind you. It's like far enough away where you feel like there's this rural connection, but then it's close enough where it's right there. And I've been down to Houston, the city of Houston, a couple times, and I have to say it's a very uniquely put together city, and it's growing. There's so much about Houston and different events that come down to Houston and arenas that are there. Why are you happy that of all places Rice could be, that the city that they ended up in is Houston, Texas?
Well, you hit on the primary reason, and it's growth, and it's growth from all parts of the United States and all parts of the globe, because we are the energy hub of, at least the United States and arguably the world, and because we have the Texas Medical Center right across the street, we've got people coming from all over the globe to Houston on a daily basis. Some are emigrating to Houston. It's a place of opportunity. It's a place where what matters most is what you're going to do, not what you've done. And so it's just a really cool environment to bring student athletes into. Many of our student athletes come from the city, so they know it already, but it's always fun when you bring in somebody from outside. We were in DC for an alumni event a little while ago, and I was speaking to the parents of a student athlete, and they're from Maryland, and they were talking about visiting Houston and visiting their daughter on campus, and talking to people at the airport or at the hotel, and they're asking them, what brings you to town, and they say, my daughter goes to Rice. And immediately the people that work at the airport or at the hotel, oh, that's such a great school, we're so proud of Rice, we're so proud it's at Houston, you must be very, very proud of your daughter. So it's a great, I think Rice feeds Houston as much as Houston feeds Rice. And it is a city that I can't imagine a better place for this university to be located.
Yeah, and when you bring somebody on, when you have a prospective student athlete come on campus and a coach calls you up and says, hey, we're doing a recruiting visit here, we'd love for them to meet you. How have you seen them respond to what we're talking about, to this Hogwarts, to this fortress? When they come on, do you ever see is there kind of like a moment of awe with some of these student athletes?
Yeah, it's particularly pronounced when the weather's good, and sometimes the one knock I would say on Houston is it gets pretty hot here in the summertime. Fortunately, we're not, we're in summer school, largely out of session, not playing games when the heat is peaking here. But if they've not been to campus, yeah, it is this. It's almost this head in the cloud type moment, right? You can't get them to look you in the eye because they're so busy taking in the surroundings. But then, Houston, like their experience of Houston, people's perception of Houston from the outside, if they've never visited, probably isn't grounded in reality. It's, obviously we've got great pro sports here. The Astros are, particularly hot right now, but at various times the Texans and the Rockets have been great. We've got arts, we're I shouldn't say right across the street, but maybe 3 blocks from the museum district here. So, you can go view timeless works of art. You can view, dinosaur bones. There's all kinds of really neat things you can do. We've got 2 major airports. We are one of the best food cities in the entire country. Think of anything that you can fuse with Mexican food, like they've done it here. Everybody knows about Tex-Mex, but there's so much more than that here. And so, generally, like I tell people, I came here for Rice, not for Houston, but certainly open to what Houston would provide. And Houston has risen up to the same level as the institution for me and for my family.
I love that, and like you said, you came here for Rice and the community rising up to what you were hoping for. Kind of leads me into, Joe, why do you continue to lead there? We see in the athletic world, some people basically writing their contracts on toilet paper. It's there and it's gone. And in other cases, we see people dedicated to a community, dedicated to an institution, dedicated to a mission and a vision. Why are you dedicated to Rice?
I think Rice fits my values and backgrounds just very, very well. And, you can never overlook that. The my experience as a Division III athletic director at a small liberal arts college, and then my experience raising money at Stanford, which is, a global institution. I think Rice marries those two experiences really, really well. And it's a place, as we've talked about, that cares about the student athlete and the student athlete experience, which, competitiveness is part of that. Absolutely. And I don't mean to be dismissive of that, but it's also so much more here. It's about life opportunities. It's about relationships and networks. It's about, expanding your knowledge base. It's about changing your perspective on the world and on life and on people. Those things happen here, and they're part of the student athlete experience. And I love that. I wouldn't trade that type of experience for any other. It's been part of me for a really long time, and I think Rice fits that very, very well.
And when it comes to student athlete, we hear about the athlete side all the time. But for a student athlete that stays and gets their education while they're competing in the sport that they love, what does a Rice University diploma mean, in your opinion?
I think the diploma gets your foot in the door in just about every conversation. I think there's a assumption of intelligence for every Rice graduate. You have a Rice diploma, people will immediately assume that you're smart, and that's pretty powerful. Now, what we try to do beyond that, while they're here, is combine that with exposure to the network, combine that with professional development opportunities, so that it's not just, and I think this is probably true like 20 to 30 years ago, you roll out there with the diploma and that was enough. But so many other schools are doing such a great job of access to internships, mentorship opportunities, resume writing, mock interviews, kind of the professional development, financial literacy, which now, of course, is part of many of the NIL laws, but lots of other schools are doing that. So we can't assume that like we don't need to do that. We have to do all of those things, and then you combine that with the powerful degree, and then it really opens so many doors. It's employment opportunities right out of college. It's the best graduate schools that you can get into. That's the power of the Rice degree when we combine it with all the other things that we do.
Joe Karlgaard here with us, Director of Athletics, Recreation, and Lifetime Fitness for Rice University for the Owls, here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Finishing up your time in Conference USA, beginning your time very soon on July 1st, 2023 in the American Athletic Conference. I've covered the American since before it had a name and a logo, so I have seen it all the way through, and I could speak on it. I would like to think pretty well. I know Mike Resco gives me a lot of credit. I don't know if I deserve it all, but I'll try to earn it every day, as I tell him. But looking at this conference that you're coming into and the one that you're leaving, how do you balance? Because and I know in the world of life, it's about building bridges, not burning them. So how do you leave this bridge that you built with Conference USA, not burn it, and then build a new bridge to the American?
That's a great question. We've since we made the announcement that we were moving into the American, which I think was October of 21, we've worked hard to assure the people in Conference USA that we would remain members in good standing throughout the length of our term with them, that we would participate as they saw fit in any policy decisions that needed to get made, hosting conference tournaments, which we're doing this spring, all of those things. And then, trying to celebrate Conference USA's accomplishments as well. They rebuilt the conference. I've had several conversations with Commissioner McLeod about that, and just congratulating her on the great work that she did. It's hard to lose 6 schools. Well, actually 9 schools, considering that three others went to the Sun Belt, and try to rebuild a conference virtually from scratch. But she did that. She did it quickly. I think she did it very well. And so, she's to be commended, and we certainly have applauded her and the work of the conference throughout that. But, on the other hand, our focus now is on the future, and Commissioner Resco has done a great job of bringing in the 6 institutions to meetings. We meet virtually every couple of weeks. And then we had in-person meetings at the conference basketball tournament. We'll have them again here at the end of May with our football and men's and women's basketball coaches as well, and our presidents. And so, we are kind of a foot in each camp right now, but as we get closer to that July 1st date, we're slowly sliding that foot out of Conference USA and both feet in the American, and we're excited about that.
What is it in this preparation that doesn't happen overnight? It happens in a long process. You have to have a strategic plan that if and when a conference came calling, you were prepared for it. So you had to have some type of literature and background and information and statistical analysis to go into the American considering you. Then you have to pass the eye test. You have to make sure you're doing things right academically and athletically. This plan takes a long time to put together, to process and bring into reality. And then from there, once you get accepted to the American, now you have to be on a bullet train essentially of making sure that everything else you have to do is there. So this is a multi-year plan. It isn't just the American called and we said yes and we'll see you July 1st. So what's it been like for you as a leader at Rice University to have a strategic plan that was ready and not just a binder sitting on a shelf, to have that ready, to talk with Mike Oresco and the American about that, and then from there, once you got accepted, to move forward? So kind of the double piece here of putting the plan together and then making sure that what you've done is not waste time between now and July 1st.
Well, I will say, there's 130-ish FBS teams out there. Everybody's paying attention to conference realignment in 2023. Yeah. I'm not sure how true that was 10 years ago. It was somewhat true, but not like it is today. I mean, I think it's ubiquitous within FBS. I don't think that engine is stopping anytime soon. And if you put that context around Rice, the thing that's unique for us and probably for Tulane, although I think we have a kind of a different claim to this, is that we spent 85 years in a power conference. So, Tulane was in the SEC, but left in the 1960s, maybe. We were in the Southwest Conference with Texas and Texas A&M and Arkansas from our inception in 1912 all the way through the mid-1990s when the Southwest Conference broke up. So that hangs as a backdrop to every conference realignment thought process, strategic plan, and discussion that we have. We used to be in the Southwest Conference. Boy, wouldn't it be great to align ourselves with a more competitive slate, with a set of institutions that are more like-minded. So knowing that, when I got here in 2013, one of the first things I did within my first 6 months was fly to Providence and meet with Mike Oresco. Rice had been left out of the last round of realignment in 2012. I know that was sort of a sore subject for our alumni and fans. And so I wanted to at least meet the guy and begin to have discussions about maybe why that happened or what he saw as the future and what he thought I should be doing. So we did that, and it was a great discussion. And throughout the years, all the way up through 2021, when we eventually got the invitation, we would periodically check in. I'd make sure he knew what we were doing. But I do think, Dan, we have to, and this is true for any institution, you've got to live into who you are. We can't try to be somebody that we're not. We are a small, highly selective private institution. We're an academic powerhouse. We're a member of the AAU. And there's 60-ish schools that can claim that. Most of them are in the autonomy conferences. And, we've had success, consistent success in women's sports and have had some success in men's sports, particularly basketball and football and consistent success in baseball. So we have to live into that profile and then, position ourselves for ways that we can improve. And I think that's the story we've been telling Mike, and the plans that we've put in place have been, we're just not just coming to the American to participate. We're going to make the investments and the strategic decisions that allow us to compete at a high level across the board in all 16 sports that we offer.
And you said when you were left out of realignment in 2012, the conversation was you wanting to know why Rice was left out. There's people that don't want any type of criticism, be it destructive or constructive, to sit down with someone and to say, why didn't you choose Rice? Why did you say no to us? It's not an easy question to ask, and a lot of people don't ask it because they don't want to hear the answer. And a lot of places don't want to grow. So when you sat down and had candid conversations with Mike Resco and said, why, what made you do that? Why do you take constructive criticism? And what did he tell you about what they were looking for and hoping for? Because obviously you did what needed to be done. So I'd love to know why you're a person that can take constructive criticism, because I think the world needs to hear that. And the second thing is, what did he tell you? What were the bullet points of saying, hey, if we come back around and look at you again, this is what I'd like to see?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty simple calculation. I mean, you need an honest current state assessment. What is your program today?
Yeah.
What does it look like from a revenue profile? What does it look like from a media profile? What does it look like from a competitive profile, academics, all of it? You need that current state assessment. You need to know what's required for you to achieve your destination, and then you put the plan in place to connect it to. So without, any conversation that I'd have with someone like Mike would be, how do you see us, and what is it that you're looking for? Because then I can build a plan around them. And if you see us in a particular way and I think you're wrong, then I'm going to tell you, I think you're misinformed here. I actually think that you've got bad information and you should look at it this way. And sometimes, that can be a debatable point, a matter of some subjectivity, but to me, it's all about connecting the current state and the future state. And you've got to understand those things really well before you build a plan. And so, when I had this conversation with the commissioner, I mean, part of it was that we have a neighbor, 3 some odd miles as the crow flies across Brays Bayou, who was already in the conference, who in effect captures the Houston DMA. And, that was an impediment, without doubt. The academic profile was there. Actually, we were starting to experience some success in football. We won the Conference USA Championship in 2013, which I think, had realignment happened a year or two after 2012, we may have had a better opportunity there. But he was honest that that they were probably not thinking expansion at that time, but also that there is always the possibility, given how realignment churns, that they might lose some schools in the future. And if they did, that, as long as we met these criteria that he laid out, that we would be at the top of the pile. And so that's how we built a plan to try and get there.
So some people hear no the first time and it's no forever and they run away from it. You heard no and thought, what can we do to hear yes next time? So what are the things that Rice has done in your time there that you've been able to put your fingerprints on that you feel have been an integral part of the strategic plan that has gotten you into the American?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is we'd had no major renovation to our football stadium since it was built. I mean, it was built in the 1950s. The stadium is it's sort of like the LA Coliseum. It's this iconic structure, right? Kennedy gave his man on the moon speech here. Super Bowl VIII was played here. So it's a nostalgic piece of architecture for a lot of people who grew up in Houston, not just Rice graduates. But obviously we hadn't done anything to it really. So the first thing we wanted to do was take care of our football program, and so we knocked out the north end zone and built the Brian Patterson Sports Performance Center and put that in place in 2016. And that's the home of our football program. It's accessible for all of our student athletes because we've got state-of-the-art training room and weight room there. But it is the home of our coaches and where our player meetings happen and where the football locker room is. And so that was the first tangible physical thing that we'd done for our football program. in many, many years outside of maybe a new scoreboard.
Yeah.
And so that was the first big piece. And then, some of the financial resources that it takes to be competitive, making sure that you're feeding your kids appropriately so that all the things that they're doing in the weight room actually have an effect. Some of the personnel, both from a recruiting standpoint and from an analyst and graduate assistant standpoint, some of the support personnel for our coaches, the size of our strength and conditioning staff, the number of trainers that we're deploying. We built all that infrastructure. We raised money for it. We took endowment for it. Some of the university support came in for it. So we started to build a profile of a program that at least looked on paper like many of the other programs in the American. And so when the opportunity came, we wanted to be ready and say, we're not that far away. Now, competitively, we've had an arc where we were conference champions in 2013 and then kind of hit a low point in 2017. And we've been climbing out of that and got to a bowl game this year and got a great team coming back, lots of returning talent. So we feel like with all the infrastructure that we've put in place and the talent that we've got coming back, that we can hit the ground running here this fall.
You spoke about women's athletics and that Rice has had success in the world of women's sports. I'd love to hear the why, in your opinion, and just what it is, because they don't get enough coverage. I've tried to break that ridiculous trend since I started my career. I literally started 2003 at a Division III institution in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and they asked me to do the basketball games. And I said, and it's NCAA games, and we had the opportunity to do it. And they said, do you want to do men's or women's? I said, I want to do both. I said, if I'm going to do the men's game, I'm going to do the women's game. And so I started my career in 2003 in November saying, I'm not doing one or the other, I'm doing both. And now 20 years later, I'm still doing both. So women's athletics should have always mattered, Joe. You know that. I know that. Now people are starting to try and catch up. Why has Rice been successful in the world of women's athletics, and what can you say about the resources you provide?
Some of it's a frontal lobe issue, I think. I mean, having once been an 18-year-old boy / man, I can tell you from experience, not just my own, but my friends, that that young men their brains develop more slowly than young women's. And so I think that the women who come to Rice, not just our student athletes, but the general student, come here with a level of focus that is just remarkable. And I think our women student athletes here really understand the value proposition of Rice athletics. It's the opportunity to compete at the highest level in their sport and earn a world-class degree. And some of our men understand that too, some don't. Most people will parrot it, but I think the women internalize it. Like they truly do get it. And how do I know this? Because I watch how they perform. I mean, these are women who, our women's track team a couple of years ago had like a 3.78 cumulative grade point average. I mean, that's just incredible. And, they were conference champions. I mean, it's incredible. They understand what the opportunity is at hand. And so it becomes a virtuous cycle, because then, other prospective student athletes see what our women's basketball and soccer and volleyball players are doing, our swimmers, track and field athletes, et cetera. And they say, that's what I want. I want to do that. And it can be done there. Both can be done there. And so it feeds upon itself in many ways.
That coming here from Joe Karlgaard of Rice University, Director of Athletics, Recreation, and Lifetime Fitness. 2 final points. One of them, we're going to play rapid fire and have some fun away from the world of sports. But right before that, it's it's the juxtaposition of me asking you to answer in to a lot of people an unanswered question in many states of sports, and then we're going to have some fun with rapid fire. So let me, I guess, ask the hard one first. NIL transfer portal. They were not supposed to be used to kill amateurism. They weren't supposed to be used with NIL to have people essentially in free agency be offered contracts and money. But we've seen in the transfer portal, with even the top coaches winning championships in the country, those coaches are losing student athletes every year and at an alarming rate. Nick Saban at Alabama, Dabo Swinney at Clemson losing a ton of student athletes with teams that are vying for national championships in the college football playoff. So transfer portal, NIL, Joe Karlgaard, what do we do from here? Because we open Pandora's box. You cannot put Pandora back in the box. And I would love to know from your standpoint as a director of athletics, recreation, and lifetime fitness, where do we go from here? And how do we make this still be collegiate athletics? Can it be?
Yeah, Dan, I probably don't have a better answer than anyone else you'd talk to or that you may come up with. I think as it pertains to transfers, I've always believed that that student athletes should be allowed to make mistakes. And so if you pick the wrong school, being allowed to transfer, I think that's fine. Whether or not that includes a year in residence or immediate eligibility, I think the rule needs to be uniform. And for a track and field athlete like myself, you could be immediately eligible while the football player had to sit a year in residence. That doesn't seem fair to me. It also runs counter to the values of the NCAA. If we're saying this isn't about profit, then you have to treat everybody the same way. And so I'm fine with the transfer. The multiple, I get I'm a little upset when I see, somebody who, maybe transfers for, for the wrong reason, whatever that may be. And then, you'll see them then again have to make another move later on. I mean, for the majority of students, multiple transfers is going to lead to no degree. And so that's ultimately not what I want to see. Some can make it work. We have student athletes on our team who've transferred multiple times, but they're all great students. And so they've been able to make it work. When you combine all of that with NIL, obviously we've got a world of inducements and, things that used to be under the table are now above board and above the table. And we can see the NCAA isn't doing a heck of a lot to enforce some of the guidelines that it's put out. I don't even know that they're calling them rules anymore. I think they call them guidelines. Like, you can choose to follow these if you want. I think I'm hopeful that Charlie Baker can do some good work with the NCAA. I think right now he's focused on kind of the right thing, which is transparency around deals. It seems like that may actually bring both chambers of Congress together to do something, because it is in the best interest of the student athletes. You think of the young man who went to Florida and is now at Arizona State. You need transparency around the deals so that student athletes understand exactly what they're getting into and that other people can see those deals and know what the market is. Yeah. I think that's a good first step for us. And where it goes for there, Dan, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's definitely confusing. And the questions that I asked back in 2020, I'm unfortunately still asking in 2023. So it was funny. I've had multiple leadership, like at places like yourself as a director of athletics. I've had multiple people say when the seat was open, when I would talk about it, kind of break it down, they're like, why don't you run for it? I was like, well, I can promise you one thing, we would not be any worse. So that's one thing I can say. So maybe maybe they need to hire me as a liaison. But with that being said, rapid fire here with Joe Karlgaard of the Rice University Owls here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. 3 questions apiece, could be about anything. I don't know, Joe, if you've ever been given the opportunity to ask anyone a question. So I'm going to give that to you on the show, because typically a director of athletics is being asked and never having the opportunity to ask. So you can ask me the first question.
Wow. Okay. Who's going to win the NBA championship this year?
Oh, that's interesting. I would probably, now I think Phoenix has had a shot the last couple of years. They're missing something. I think that Phoenix on paper would make sense. But if I had to pick today, I would pick the Boston Celtics. I would say Boston.
Okay.
All right, Joe, let's see here. Someone's going to play you in a movie, Joe. What actor plays Joe Karlgaard, and what do you call the movie?
So one of the president's assistants told me a few weeks ago that she thought Billy, I think his last name's Crudup, looks like me, or at least in that moment he looked like me, so probably him.
Okay.
And the title of the movie would be Boy from Bismarck.
Boy from Bismarck. Okay, I like it, and I can see the resemblance. I can see it. I pulled it up in the studio, so I can see it. Not a bad rate. You could, there's some people that people could tell you look like, and you're like, no, I don't. Please say no. Billy Crudup, that's okay. What's your second one for me?
What? I'm going to stick with the sports theme.
Okay.
Who's going to be the second pick in the NFL draft?
Well, that belongs to Houston. So I think there's a chance that Lamar Jackson could be traded on draft night. And for those of you watching this retroactively, you can know if I was right or not. But I have said on the show on Wake Up Call that there's a chance that we could see Lamar Jackson traded to Houston or Indianapolis, so that Baltimore could jump into the second or fourth spot and draft Anthony Richardson. So I think if that happens and Baltimore trades, then it would be a quarterback, probably Anthony Richardson. I think if Houston keeps the pick, once again, this people that are watching now are going to see this after time, so I'm either right or horrendously wrong. If Houston kept the pick, they have Davis Mills. I don't know if they would pick a quarterback. They might pick CJ Stroud, but they don't necessarily have to do that. So if it was the second pick, I would say that if Houston keeps it, they should go for either a wide receiver or a defensive lineman. That's what I would say.
Okay.
But this Lamar thing is strange. All right, you're keeping with sports, so I'm going to keep with sports. You become the head of an NFL franchise. What NFL franchise do you become the owner of, and why? So let's think current roster. You could pick any one of the 32 franchises. You become the head of that franchise. I want to know why you picked that franchise, and I want to know the first move that you make.
I'd buy the 49ers.
Okay.
I love their talent. I think, just incredible skill, talent, great defense. I love Kyle Shanahan. John Lynch, like soup to nuts. I think they're just an outstanding organization. And I think they are, if you could compress the NFL playoffs into, the next 5 years of NFL playoffs into a week, you'd see that they're gonna win one of these. I'm not exactly sure when. I think the quarterback situation there is just exceedingly interesting. What's the first move that I'd make? I'd probably figure out how to leverage one of my two quarterbacks I actually heard this argument yesterday on the radio about Purdy and his rookie contract as Mr. Irrelevant and how that opens up space for you to spend elsewhere. And so I try to figure out how to leverage one of those two guys to round out my roster. I'm not exactly sure which position I'd go to first, but I don't think that having them coexist is. I realize they've both been hurt, so maybe I should knock on wood as I say this, but
Yeah.
I don't think that's a sustainable model.
No, no, and I agree. And I think Brock Purdy's the future, and I think Trey Lance is the trade bait right now.
Yeah.
What's your final question?
Trying to see the stuff you have behind me or behind you.
Yeah. So there's some Syracuse stuff, my hometown.
Yeah.
Wine College, the American Athletic. I have my 3 fantasy football championships. I have my basketball championship when I was the MVP. And then we have Christy Martin's gloves from boxing, and considered a pioneer for women in boxing. And then there's a lot of quotes and some other meaningful stuff. Some things from my grandparents are around me as well.
Is that a Syracuse football helmet?
That is a Syracuse football helmet.
So it looks like it's signed.
Listen, yeah.
I was just going to say, who's the signature?
Yeah, the signature is Moose Johnston. I am a Jaguars fan. My second favorite team is the Cowboys. Sorry, Houston, please don't be mad at me. And so Moose, being a Syracuse orange as well as Dallas Cowboy, I got that from my buddy. So my buddy, a big time Dallas fan, AJ McInnes, he said to me, he said, "Hey, I got this autographed helmet and I'm going to put it on eBay unless you want it." So he gave me the right of first refusal, didn't charge me anywhere near what he was going to put it on eBay for. And now it sits in my studio from like the day I got it. So
it's a good friend.
Yeah, no, very good friend. Shout out to AJ. That's why I said his full name. So gotta give him love. AJ McInnes. You would appreciate it, especially with this, airing to a lot of people in Texas. My final question for you, Joe. If you were a student athlete today, what sport would you play and what song would you come out to?
Wow, great question.
Thank you.
So I think I'd be a baseball closer.
Okay. I like it.
I'm a lefty.
Southpaw, I like it.
Yeah, so it's always kind of a dream, and I'm a lifelong Yankee fan, and so Mariano Rivera is like maybe my all-time favorite player. So it's not going to be Enter Sandman because I'm not gonna steal that from him.
Okay.
The song I'd come out to is Ballroom Blitz.
Okay. I like that. I like that. That brings a little bit of kind of chaos music out there when you're coming out onto the field, which is a good thing. So I like that. Mariano Rivera connection, closer, lefty, Ballroom Blitz. It's a good answer. That coming from Joe Karlgaard of Rice University, the Owls, who are finishing up in Conference USA, and as of July 1st of this year, 2023, will be joining the American Athletic Conference in perfect timing for the 10-year anniversary. Joe, as always, thank you for your time. Thank you for your awesome questions. And thank you for being so candid about everything that's been happening at Rice and the plan to get to where you are today.
I appreciate the opportunity, Dan, and I hope to connect with you again soon.